The frozen wilderness of northern Canada was as breathtaking as it was unforgiving. Towering pines blanketed in snow stretched endlessly toward the horizon, and the howling winter winds seemed to whisper secrets to anyone daring enough to listen. Emma, Luke, Claire, and Jason were seasoned adventurers, drawn to this remote wilderness for an unforgettable winter camping experience. They had heard the warnings, stories of strange occurrences in the area, but dismissed them as folklore. They wanted an adventure, and they were about to get more than they bargained for. Their journey began in high spirits. By late afternoon, they reached a secluded clearing surrounded by dense forest. Snowflakes danced in the air, creating a serene yet eerie atmosphere. As the group unloaded their gear, Claire looked around, frowning. "It's too quiet," she muttered. "It's the wilderness, Claire," Luke said, setting up a tent. "No traffic, no neighbors. This is exactly what we wanted." But even he felt a strange weight in the air, as if the forest itself were watching them. By dusk, the campsite was ready. A fire crackled in the center, and the group huddled around, laughing and sharing stories. The temperature dropped sharply as night fell, and the forest seemed to close in around them. As they were finishing their meal, Emma suddenly froze. "Did anyone hear that?" "Hear what?" Jason asked, glancing into the dark woods. "A crunching sound, like footsteps," she whispered. Jason chuckled nervously. "Probably an animal." But deep down, all of them felt it. Something wasn't right. That night, Emma awoke to a faint sound, a low rhythmic crunching of footsteps on the snow. Heart pounding, she unzipped her tent and peeked outside. The fire had died down to embers, and the camp was bathed in pale moonlight. At first, she saw nothing. Then, near the edge of the clearing, a shadow moved between the trees. It was tall, unnaturally tall, and its movements were slow and deliberate. "Jason?" she whispered, hoping it was her friend. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. The figure stopped and turned its head toward her, though its face was hidden in shadow. Emma's breath caught in her throat as it began to move closer, its steps impossibly silent now. "Wake up!" she screamed, scrambling back into her tent. Jason and Luke emerged from their tents, groggy and confused. "What's going on?" Jason demanded. "There's someone out there," Emma stammered. They shone their flashlights into the forest, but there was nothing there, just endless trees and snow. "You probably imagined it," Luke said, though he gripped his flashlight tightly. But as the group settled back into their tents, Jason swore he heard faint laughter, soft, hollow, and far too close. The next morning, the group found something strange near their camp. Footprints, large, human-like but distorted, circled their tents and led off into the forest. "These weren't here last night," Claire whispered. "Maybe it was just snow shifting," Luke offered weakly, though his voice lacked conviction. The group decided to explore the surrounding forest in daylight. They stayed close together, marking their path carefully. But as they ventured deeper, a heavy fog began to roll in, swallowing the trees and muffling all sound. "This is bad," Jason said. "We need to head back now." But before they could retrace their steps, Claire let out a startled cry. "Did you see that? Someone just moved through the trees." "No one's here but us," Jason insisted, though his eyes darted nervously around. The fog thickened, and Claire suddenly vanished. One moment she was there, and the next she was gone. "Claire!" Emma shouted, panic rising in her voice. They searched frantically, but there was no sign of her. Only the faint echoes of footsteps in the snow remained. As night fell, the remaining three returned to camp, shaken and desperate. The fire roared to life, but it brought little comfort. The air was heavy with an oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional crackle of wood, and then the whispers began. They came from all around, soft and indistinct at first, like voices carried on the wind. "Do you hear that?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. Jason nodded, his face pale. It's saying our names." Luke stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. It's just our minds playing tricks." But the whispers grew louder, circling the camp. They sounded close, too close, and carried a mocking, sinister tone. Luke, fed up, grabbed a flashlight and stormed into the woods. "I'm not sitting here waiting for whatever this is." "Luke, don't!" Emma shouted, but he was already gone. Minutes passed, then an hour, and Luke didn't return. Now only Emma and Jason remained. They sat by the fire, clutching whatever weapons they could find, a hunting knife, a metal rod from the tent. "I don't think we're leaving this place," Jason muttered, staring into the flames. Emma didn't respond. She was watching the darkness beyond the firelight, where shadows seemed to shift and dance unnaturally. Suddenly, the fire flickered violently, and for a brief moment they saw it. A tall, distorted figure standing at the edge of the light. Its limbs were unnaturally long, and its face was a featureless void. Emma screamed, and the figure vanished as the fire dimmed. "We have to get out of here," Jason said, his voice shaking. But when they tried to leave, they found their tracks leading nowhere. It was as if the forest had rearranged itself, trapping them in a labyrinth of snow and trees. By dawn, Emma woke up alone. The fire was out, and Jason's tent was empty. She stumbled into the clearing, calling his name, but there was no response. Only an eerie silence, broken by the faint sound of laughter echoing through the trees. Hours later, a rescue team found Emma wandering aimlessly, her clothes torn and her eyes wide with terror. She couldn't explain what had happened, only that they had taken her friends. When the team searched the area, they found no sign of Jason, Luke or Claire. But near the campsite in the snow, they discovered footprints, huge, distorted, and leading deep into the forest. Locals say that on cold, foggy nights, you can still hear whispers in those woods, calling out the names of those who dare to enter.